What's going on, you guys? It's your girl Akira coming to you guys with what we ignore on today's episode. I'm so excited to, be shedding light on something so important. So I want you to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Kali Crowder. Everyone calls me Leaky or Leak. I'm a soon-to-be graduate from the University of New Haven, and I'm an entertainment news personality from Long Island, New York, born and raised.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I wanted to bring you on here because I feel this is something definitely that we ignore in society and people don't want to, shed light on. And it's something that's so vocal right now with what's going on. And so I just want you to tell me briefly about your story, and we can go from there.
So, how I came out, I'm like trying to go back into like the archives of my mind. I feel like growing up, you know, I feel like growing up, and I didn't really learn this until later on. I feel like I always had an attraction to other boys. I remember being in like elementary school and I was in like I usually wanted to hang around the girls and I only wanted to hang around the guys, meaning like I would like stand by, and watch them play basketball at the court. Um I feel like I feel like it wasn't until I want to say but basically like the eighth grade, and then when I was like 17 or 18, my mother basically caught me watching adult films, and so that was kind of a little bit how I had to start little like kind of being open and kind of explain myself in those particular situations. I feel like I wasn't fully. I think it wasn't until I was 18 or 19 that I kind of finally to embrace. This is kind of the short version to kind of embrace who I am. And I think I was more afraid of coming out just because I have an older brother who's also gay and a cousin who's also gay as well. So I didn't want my mom having these perceptions of like, oh, did my older brother Dries have anything to do with that? No, it didn't. I just never felt, as years came by, I just never felt attracted to women. I think it's also too, which kind of goes back to what we're trying to fight in this country right now in terms of, I guess more so, I guess kind of like respectability politics. You know how like with women are told, you guys need to cover up or cover up and not wear revealing clothing or whatever, and you won't get sexually assaulted, which is not. First of all, that doesn't happen because there are women who could be a victim of that being fully dressed. And it's also we never say, men stop, do not put your hands on a woman, do not harass a woman. As far as me being gay, I feel like sometimes the years came by. I feel like I guess it's different if you're a child. Well, maybe actually there was some times, but I feel like there was times I feel like I was kind of being policed in how like I was expressing myself for the things that I wanted. Like I knew when I was young I couldn't ask for a Barbie doll, even though I wanted one. I think I wanted the Beyonce one. I didn't ask. I couldn't. My mom was like, I'm not getting an Easy Bake Oven because it's for girls. Or like things like and I think there was times like my mom and sister was kind of like, I think they're more so worried about me being gay is just because like when you go outside in the world, people don't know you and people are ignorant, and they're going to project their ignorance onto you through violent attacks and assault and stuff of that nature. So it's kind of like you have to. It's kind of like I was kind of told like be careful on how you walk and speak, or the clothes you wear, the makeup, whatever the case may be, because their fears of is their son possibly getting beaten up. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like in America, you already have we're already black and we can get shot in the streets for being black. That's, and I remember, growing up and being told not to wear red or not to wear a hoodie, or, not to have the hoodie over your head. Just because, there's gang activity out there, there's police that will stop you or white people that will harass you for wearing a hoodie because they think you're a threat to them. So it's basically been along those lines. Um, but yeah, it wasn't really easy just because I feel like over time, how people have treated gay folks have kind of changed. And so I was always kind of afraid of what I guess what people would say. Because I also do remember when I was younger, my older brother, he used to take me to camp, and and he would like wear a purse, and I was made fun of on the school bus for that. So hope that answers your question.
It does, it does. And so you talk to me, just briefly about um, your mom finding what she found, and then you also talked about family members that work, and so what I want to know is, was your family and friends supportive when you came out?
Um, I would say, I would say for the most part. I don't know if I would say. Trying to think. I think that it took for a while for my mom to kind of to kind of come to terms with it. I feel like. I think my mom was kind of like, a lot of times people will be like, how do you know if you're gay? You've never been in a relationship or you've never had sex and actually I've had, my first time I had sex was when I was a young teenager, but my mom doesn't know that. So, you know, um, I think growing up with a single mom, it kind of made having those kind of conversations a little bit more hard to have, or a little bit more awkward, because it's kind of like we always talk about the birds and the bees and little, more like things like that, to kind of you talk with, the parent that matches your gender. um I think also at the same time too, I mean, they never kicked my brother out of the house. They never, never disregard him for that or whatever. So they didn't do the same with me. Um, but I also do feel like I don't know. I'm the type that doesn't really like to share my. I don't really like to share my personal life like that. Just in general with a lot of people, with other family members. And I also feel like, I do remember, because I have a lot of cousins. When you're black, you got to have a lot of cousins. And like, sometimes my mom, like, I would post stuff on Facebook, and my mom's like, Khalik, you might want to think about that or whatever, because they're my other family members and they don't know you, whatever. But feel like for me, I'm in the headspace of, listen, if they don't, like it or whatever, then that's their problem. I just got to move on. I got to live my life and be my unapologetic self. But yeah, I think God, I didn't have the family that would that would kick you out, or say you're going to hell for being gay. I don't know. I mean, my mom is from New York as well, and she grew up in the 70s and was a fashion student. So perhaps there was, that could kind of be a main reason. Like, for example, like New York City has always been a breeding ground for queer folks, is what I'm trying to get at, where she was probably more exposed to that stuff. So and we're not
So that makes
heavily
sense.
crazy.
So okay. And so that kind of, makes sense. So just feeding off of that, have you, dealt with, because I know you just talked about like briefly about growing up, have you dealt with adversity, being gay and being an African American male at the same time?
Yeah. Yeah, I would definitely say so. I mean, as far as racism, I didn't really deal with that until it was like in the eighth grade, when I started to go to mostly white schools. But I feel like growing up, I was the most part myself. I didn't realize how much it became a problem to everybody else until I was older. Trying to think examples of it. For example, like people used to say, oh, like, oh, which never really made sense. People would kind of replace, like, when people say that XYZ is that's so lame or whatever, people say, oh, that's gay as fuck, or that's so gay,
Mm-hmm.
which was a little, which was which I felt was offensive, because it kind of stigmatized a word, or just that sexual orientation. Also, this is kind of where toxic masculinity, I feel like, comes into play. Growing up, I feel like a lot of times as Black people, we're kind of expected to we're kind of expected to listen to artists or be into things that matches up to our gender and our race. So like I remember being at summer camp, and when people asked me, because I was also like, I think I signed up to be, to work the radio station, because I'm such a big music person, and like, when I let people know, like, I like Britney Spears or Rihanna or Katy Perry, whatever, and that's when I was starting to get a lot of bullying from boys, because they're kind of like, why are you listening to them, like, I guess I'm supposed to be listening to Lil Wayne or Gucci Mane or whatever. And my thing is, music, good music is good music, period. I think it also, for me, over the years, it kind of became hard to be friends with other guys, particularly straight guys, just because they don't like, they either feel I feel like a lot of times straight guys, especially straight black guys, don't want to be friends with gay people because they're either worried about what their family or their friends or people think about them. They also feel like it'll make them less of a, I guess it'll kind of like, I don't want to say like emasculate them, make them less of a man. They feel like gay people. I'm trying to think of if there's like any other reason. But those are some of the reasons. I think it's also too is that, there's also this perception that gay guys are that we're all into the same thing, like we're into fashion or beauty or makeup or whatever the case may be. And I will say though that like it probably is a little bit harder just because like I'm not into things that are usually typically associated with straight men, especially straight black men. They love like video games, sneakers, cars, did I say sports, trying to think, comic books. So I think that makes it a little bit harder too in terms of conversations or because I feel like you find your tribe, you find your lifelong friends when you guys carry a lot of similar interest. As far as making friends with other gay people, it's something, obviously I feel like you have to be able to find the right safe spaces for that to happen, because obviously everyone doesn't. I think it's also because of heteronormativity, we just assume right off the bat that people are called, we assume right off the bat that people are straight, until we get to know them, or they're very open with their sexuality, whatever the case may be. So, now, I mean, obviously today it's gotten a little bit better because there is safe spaces in New York City. There's apps like Grindr. There's like social services that are designed specifically for LGBT youth. And then it's also kind of combating racism, because there are a lot of white queer folks who are racist, and it's kind of like black queer people exist, so it's kind of so it's a very puzzling thing to kind of, it's kind of heartbreaking to know, because it's like being, I guess kind of the purpose or what makes LGBT community is being able to be different in yourself or whatever, but it's like we're oppressing other people within that, but it's like people are oppressing other people in that community as well, especially trans folks. I also feel like it can be a little bit harder making friends. I think a lot of times gay guys, this is my personal experience, we make friends with women. Women tend to be less judgmental, they're more opening, but also a lot of times you have women who will, try to make you their gay best friend, and that's very problematic, just because they will try, like, we're not an accessory, you know what I'm saying, we're not an accessory. Friendships are not supposed to be one-sided, it's supposed to be a two-way street. And it's also like, if you're my friend, you need to defend me like to like it's no, like it's nobody's business, basically, like, I've definitely heard of stories of gay guys and how they were friends with straight women, but their straight best friend had a homophobic boyfriend, and they didn't want to, they didn't want to you know what I'm saying, defend. It's kind of like how like a black man will be with a white girl, but the white girl's family doesn't care for the black man, and the white girl doesn't put her foot down, type of situation. um and I think I kind of lost my track of thought. um yeah, that's a struggle in itself. I think it's also too, we have to get out of our minds that, also religion as well. Religion plays a big part. I haven't really dealt with that. And if people say, and if people tell me, oh, you're going to hell because you're gay, whatever, I really don't care. Whatever. I'm not really. I'm still trying. At 24 years old, I'm still trying to explore other religions myself. I don't think I've probably been called names before, but and there are gay people who like to use the word faggot as a term of endearment, kind of like how black people use the N word as it. I don't, that word was made to tear down people. And then also we kind of have to get out of our heads that when it comes to bigotry, is that it doesn't just involve actively calling somebody something. You know what I'm saying? Like, obviously the big thing with racism now is also trying to combat covert racism or microaggressions. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of times it kind of feels like when you're gay, you know, it's kind of like people. It's kind of like with blackness. Like, let's say 60 years ago, black people weren't allowed to be in white spaces. Now today we're in white spaces, but it's kind of this unspoken rule, or this kind of like atmosphere of, you need to leave your blackness at the door. And sometimes it feels like, when you're the only gay person in the room, it's kind of like you need to leave your gayness at the door. I mean, and I notice white people tend to be more accepting than black people, and especially in the recent couple of years of the queer liberation movement. But a lot of times it's very like people be like, oh, you're trying to force your gayness on us, or you go out of your way to say the most gayest things, or I wouldn't want my child to be gay, or why this whole gay agenda, like it's all bullshit, and it just gets very annoying to me because people deserve representation. Like you can, I mean, we grew up with a bunch of heteronormativity that didn't end up making me straight, you know. And also it's kind of, and also people will say, oh well, just because I said that doesn't mean I'm homophobic. My cousin is gay, my best friend is. That's like white people being racist and trying to hide behind, oh well, I have a black friend, or my husband is black. You can still be bigoted. You know what I'm saying? Like that really annoys me. And my thing about it is like you also, and kids continue to still watch Ellen DeGeneres and listen to Lil Nas X or whatever. So I don't know why you have a problem with it. And as far as your child being gay or trans or whatever, you can't control what your kid is going to end up doing, especially once they get older with their life. You don't have any control. And your job as a parent is to love them unconditionally, period. You know what I'm saying? It's yeah.
Hmm.
So I don't think that's kind of, and also too, there's different like there's also different like I feel like I don't say there's a hierarchy, and I guess you could kind of say it. I feel like there's definitely a double standard when it comes to lesbian women versus gay men. And of course with trans folk, it's sad that they're at the bottom and they're still trying to fight for their fight for liberation as well. I feel like with lesbian women it's sometimes more accepted, especially if you're I guess a dyke, or I'm saying like a masculine acting lesbian, like someone like Young Ma. You fit in much better because most of the time you're into the same thing that guys like. With as gay guys, people are always like, what do you guys, people kind of like have this kind of like attitude of what they like, you can't what they it's always the first question of what we're doing in the bedroom, or um they kind of feel like we're kind of breaking this rule of you know acting very feminine and not being, when we're being ourselves. If I'm being myself, why do you have an issue with it? And also, why do you care who I'm in the bedroom with? And my thing too, and also what happens as well is that with straight men, they can have all the conversations in the office or at happy hour about all the sex they have, or other things related to that. But when we talk about our what's going on in our lives, which involves like me, I'm slept with another man, slept with a guy, whatever, do whatever case may be, they just feel uncomfortable about it. So that's where it goes with back to the whole leaving your your blackness or your gayness at the door. So
So you just, shed light on a lot of things that, you guys face as adversity. So what I want to know is, how do you cope with your mental state? Like, especially from the time that you first came out until up until now. I know you guys are still, fighting, but, Barack Obama, for instance, he came out and made sure that you guys were able to have same-sex marriage. I also want to know, just briefly, how did you feel about that? Like, were you elated? Like, what were
I
your
was happy.
thoughts? And oh,
I was happy.
I'm
No.
sure.
I really, and it's crazy. I think that year. Well, actually, well, technically, I guess 2 years before. Well, we were late to this wedding. I never been to a wedding until I was like in my like late teens. But like, I think after seeing that, I really want to, because I do want to get married one day. I mean, I know our generation is kind of some of our generations kind of throwing away the idea of being married, or being married. Um, but I really would love to go to a gay wedding, just to, even if I don't know the person like that, just to kind of see how everything is set up and orchestrated, whatever. But that would definitely be a dream. I'm happy he did it. People deserve to get married to who they, like who they want to get married to. So, I think
Mhm.
I mean, I know there are also businesses and shops that are, of course, because of their religious values, refuse to serve, same-sex couples. Now, I don't know. I mean, there probably, I know there are people trying to push for laws to make sure they don't do that. At the same time, I feel like, if they do not want to, serve me, for the wedding, that I'm gonna have, then I'll take my money somewhere else. That's kind of how I see it. You know what I'm saying? Like, because I mean, the government, of course, can make a law to force you to make it happen, but it's just like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, when you're a business owner, whatever the case may be, you want like your customer, you want to feel valued by the company that.
I agree. And my other question was about how was your mental state, you know, growing up and dealing with everything?
Um, I would say right now I'm working on, you know, my inner child healing. And I just say that because I was made fun of when I was a kid and a teenager for a lot of things. And I think that people don't realize, um, you know, we talk about trauma, we talk about generational curses. People don't kind of realize, and people say, well, get over it. Or, you know, sometimes, you know, you being oppressed in your earlier years will make you a better person years on. Um, I feel like we don't talk about how that can really f up your self-esteem, you know, being made fun of or being or feeling like an outsider and stuff like that. So, you know, I go to virtual therapy. You know, obviously this quarantine I have a lot of downtime. I watch, you know, shows and also, like, you know, like frivolous cartoons and stuff like that, you know. I mean, if you're kind of going towards like the self-care thing, I think it's also like being in my 20s, I'm kind of redefining my identity, I guess, or kind of redefining my existence. You know what I'm saying? Like the thing, and when it comes to healing, like healing is a journey, not a destination. Like I feel like you're always going to be healing. It's not an overnight thing that sometimes Twitter kind of makes it to be. You know, you're always going to, you know, someday, you know, everything's going to come in waves. I feel like your highs and lows. Um, but you know, also trying to have the right people in my life and surrounding myself with the right people is a big key. Um, and when I talk about, I guess, redefining, it's kind of like, for example, when I was younger, I was made fun of because of my weight, you know, and plus size. You know, like, and then in my 20s, like I was telling my therapist how, you know, like when I would go on the app Grinder, which is kind of a gay dating, more of a hookup app than dating, if you ask me. But you know, it's like meeting a lot of guys who like, you know, plus size dudes and stuff like that, you know, and appreciate them. So it's kind of, it kind of still feels a little weird, like a 190 kind of experience, you know, to go from, you know, this kind of underdog, this kind of life that kind of being an underdog kind of takes you on. But you know, I'm managing through. I know it'll all get better in time. So, but therapy has been a big part, you know, therapy, finding a safe space, and also just having people in your life that we all have similar experiences, and pop culture as well. Because like I watch shows like Pose, you know, representation is really good because it can make people's experience much better. You know, I remember my counselor telling me, you know, he's Haitian, and when he was younger, he was made fun of for it, and then the Fugees came out like in the mid 90s and then became popular, and then he kind of felt more comfortable, and the bullying kind of decreased, I would say. um so when you have people on TV and you see experiences and stuff like that, it just feels so great. You know, like I watched Pose, I was like, oh my god, where's the show been all my life? Because you can kind of like I mean, for me, I can relate to a lot of the stuff that goes on with that show. Or like people like EJ Johnson when he had his own show, like I could relate a lot to him and stuff like that. It kind of lets me know that I'm not alone. So
And so you just talked about, you know, your mental state. And so another thing that I want to know is, are there resources that you use yourself or resources that you think would be applicable for other individuals that are dealing with the same issues?
yeah, listen, Google's trying to think off the top of my head, there's Moby, there is trying to think, there's Slate TV. I use for counseling, virtual for mental health counseling. I use I use BetterHelp.com, and they try to get a counselor that kind of matches up with your identity. Podcasts as well. There's a lot of podcasts out there. I mean, I'm not a black girl, but there's Therapy for Black Girls, which I use, which they have a lot of great episodes. I'm trying to think, there's others. There's a lot of them out. I really can't think off the top of my head, but there's definitely out there, you know, and that's and that's also what makes it great about social media. Even though some days it kind of feels like a curse, it can feel like a blessing because you're able to find other people who are like you, and you just necessarily don't feel alone. You know, if you're from small town Dakota, there's not a lot of other gay folks or whatever. There's Twitter, and you connect to other people who carry your same identity, and it makes it better for when you move to other cities too. You know.
And my last question for you is, what advice would you give to people that are trying to come out or struggling with it or dealing with the adversity or don't know where to go to or talk about these topics?
I would say my advice is try to see if you can find an ally or another, I mean, a fellow person, you know, like if you're coming as a lesbian, gay person, find someone else through, you know, I mean, if not in your area, through, you know, the internet. I would also say, I mean, it's kind of hard for me to give that advice because you know, what also happens too is, you know, I don't know other people's families and their dynamics, you know, so it's kind of like
Mm-hmm.
tell someone just be yourself, come out, whatever the case may be, and that could result in someone getting kicked out of the house, you know. Now, me
Mm-hmm.
personally, if I was in that situation where I knew I grew up somewhere where, you know, it's not, you know, acceptable to be, you know, anything other than heterosexual in the house, um, I personally wouldn't. Also, ballroom culture as well is a big thing for why it means a lot to queer folks. But I mean, I don't know. I would personally move through life and act like I'm straight until I'm basically have my own livelihood set up. Because the thing is, what's sad about when it comes to youth and young adults getting kicked out the house for being gay, whatever, they automatically lose all their livelihood, and it's kind of like you need a foundation to get for us to be, you know, normal, productive, working adults in our society. Um, so it's I'm kind of telling you to fake it till you make it, but I would definitely say reach out to people, you know, to get help.
Okay. Well, I do appreciate you again, coming and talking about this because I know it's a difficult topic for others. And so for you to come and, shed light on it, it's really important. And thank you. And also tell us briefly your social medias so that everyone can follow you.
Cool. Social media is Twitter and Instagram. It's Leaky Crowder, LeekyCrowder. You can also follow me on Facebook as well, Khalid Crowder, Kh2AsLiq. Last name Crowder, Crowder.
Thank you again. And make sure you guys, subscribe to my YouTube at What We Ignore and also subscribe to my Twitter. And as well as I said, subscribe to my Twitter, follow my Twitter. And also make sure you guys subscribe to my podcast, What We Ignore, and as well as follow my Instagram. And I can't wait for you guys to see more conversations that I have for you guys this week.